Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another week of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and this week I am actually at home watching a blizzard come down, a nor'easter. It's our second one in a week, it feels like. So we're expecting a lot of snow. Everything is sort of shut down. So I am here catching up on my podcasts. And so this week, I wanted to introduce you to Jenna Ward. You know, I found her somehow online, and we do very similar work. So in her past life, she was a pharmacist, a hospital pharmacist. And now what she does for a living is she helps women become embodied with that beautiful feminine spirit, and just powerful work that she is doing in this world, and I knew that I needed to have her on. So we jammed all about how a woman can really step into that beautiful feminine. You know, if you're you can be certainly a very successful, driven woman. But I think that if you're in that space 24/7, that really starts to break down our bodies. And that's something that I love teaching women, is how to really just step out of that and know how to step in to your innate feminine soul. And so we talked about that and some of the ways we can easily do that. And sometimes, you know what? It does take some time. And I know we're all busy. We really are, right? But there is some time that we need to schedule for ourselves, to call back for us. And this is the perfect place to start. So we talked about that. I learned all about her morning rituals, and that was really just beautiful, what she does in the morning and in the evening, how she kind of ends her day. And so we do have some similar things that we do. And I really love how she really incorporates feminine flow and feminine dance into her practice on a somewhat regular daily basis. So I really hope that you enjoy this conversation, to just start being really mindful about really stepping into that feminine, that sensual self, which I really want us all to embody. You know, it is who we are as women. And so really embracing that, it's really a beautiful thing. So on to the show. My guest is Jenna Ward. Welcome, Jenna, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, you know, what drew me to you was what you do. I mean, the way you empower women around their feminine. I mean, we're just going to talk so much about this stuff because it's something that I love, and I love teaching women about this. It's something that I practice on a somewhat daily basis. And I would love to also see how you do it, because it just, not only will it inspire me, but it will inspire other women. So why don't we jump to how you got started? And because I know sort of unconventionally, you have like a beginning to your story, which is very similar to mine as well.
Very similar. So words like feminine, embodiment, sensual, power, magnetism were words that were never in my vocabulary growing up. I come from an agricultural background, and I was originally a hospital pharmacist. So working in hospitals with patients who had chemotherapy, managing a team of pharmacists here in Australia, which is where I grew up. And at some point in that career, I think like a lot of women, I kind of got to the top of the food chain. So, you know, the top of my career progression was in my mid-20s. And I looked around and thought, like, is this it? Is this what I've been, you know, aspiring to my whole life? And at that same time, my body started to really speak to me with these symptoms of dishappiness and discord with the way I was operating in my life. I had some really unusual symptoms, like I was feeling nauseated, so really sick in my tummy, but only Monday through Friday when I was at work. And I was a pharmacist, so I was taking all the anti-nausea medicines to help keep that under control, wasn't touching the side of it. And this opportunity came into my life to begin to work with some more holistic or alternative people. And I was really open to that because I was feeling terrible in my body. I was despondent about what was going on in my work, felt sick. So I went and saw this alternative practitioner, a kinesiologist who works with energy medicine, and I'm now trained as a kinesiologist as well. It kind of blew my circuits. I was like, whoa, what is this other world? And so after fixing the nausea, after really moving through what was causing this nausea, which in short, I was eating a lot of sugar as a substitute for sensation because there was not a lot of genuine pleasure in my life, and that was causing dis-ease, like symptoms physically. I decided, okay, I really need to find a different way of operating and a really fulfilled, purposeful way of operating. And that journey took many twists and turns, but eventually led me to the work that I do today, which is about women being in their body and not only making decisions from their mind, but from making them from the real essence of who we are, really showing up, spending our time, making decisions as the woman that we truly are, not as the woman that we think we should be or that we're told we need to be.
I love that. So what sort of turns you on? So you had a kinesiologist, then that you loved that so much, and you became a kinesiologist. And then how did it actually turn into this whole embodiment practice?
Well, in my experience with energy medicine and in my experience with a lot of different types of new ways of working, so we could maybe call it New Age spirituality if we want to put it in a label, but really a lot of ways that as women we are shown to kind of empower ourselves. A lot of these are really mental and intellectual, and that was my experience in kinesiology. So I had an in-person practice. I was seeing clients in person. I was working with them, working through energy, getting amazing results for these clients. But for me, and for the particular flavor of woman that I am, it didn't feel like there was enough oomph in a person's body. So what I mean by that was, we were working with energy centers and working with lots of really amazing different types of mindsets and beliefs and things like this, but it was all very intellectual. It was all very conceptual. We weren't necessarily feeling the really deep textures in the body of that, whatever was coming up. So for me and for my particular body type, I wasn't at that time. I was actually a really numb person who didn't really feel like they felt a lot. But I knew that I wanted to feel more, and I knew I wanted my clients to feel more. So I began this inquiry of like, well, if there's all this beautiful wisdom about everything that you need is inside of you, and all of these beautiful energy centers and magical, mystical things exist in the world, how can I experience those and make them true in my cells day in, day out in the way that I'm operating in the world? And I found that what needed to happen was I needed to translate this spiritual theory, this intellectual idea about what empowerment meant. I needed to feel it. And that's really what the concept of embodiment is, coming into the body, feeling the body, and developing more sensitivity within the body. Because we can think that we're, as evolved or as empowered as we want to think we are, but if we're not feeling it in the body, like if we're not feeling authentically sensual or authentically confident in the body, then we haven't actually really somatically anchored that feeling state into ourselves. And that's what I knew that I needed. And I could see that's what really created next level results for my clients, because this body is a tool. It's like walking around with us constantly. So we are constantly able to tap into this body. We're in a woman's body, so it happens to be a feminine body. In my experience, like, life got supercharged. Like, I thought it was good before. It got supercharged when I started contacting the body and the feminine fuel that the sensations and that the emotions of our body are.
Now, do you mean as in When you say sensitive, are you talking about like the woman's intuition? Are you talking about how we can sense things and have those gut feelings and things like that?
Yeah. So in my experience, when people speak about intuition, we're kind of putting all different types of non-linear, non-mind ideas into a big boiling pot together. So if we actually distill like what is intuition, I believe it's a spectrum, and it's a spectrum from at the simplest level, just dropping out of your mind into feeling what your body is feeling. So feeling the sensations, the textures, the emotions. These are all part of our intuition. Like, how do we feel that gut knowing? It's a sensation in our body. But there's more still. So our body is also a warehouse of all of the data that we've ever been in contact with in our life. We are only consciously aware of about 10% of what our body is absorbing in any situation. So there are vast realms of data that are available in the body, and I call this instinctual intuition, because sometimes when we become sensitive to the body, we can begin to feel and draw conclusions based on all that data that we might consciously not even know is there. And this is an instinctual intuition that every woman has. When we kind of have this knowing without knowing, this perception, this insight, without really realizing where it came from, often that's coming from this non-conscious data warehouse. And then on the far end of the spectrum, there's mystical intuition, which is like, you know, things that you have absolutely no right to know. And again, how do we perceive that mystical intuition? How do we trust that mystical intuition? Well, we perceive it through the body, and we trust it by feeling that it feels true in the body. I'm getting really passionate, and I'm noticing my voice is getting louder as I'm speaking about this, because no matter what type of intuition it is, the vehicle, the tool that we have to interface with both reality, but also higher levels of consciousness or spirituality, if that's our jam, is the body. And unless we are sensitive to the inner mechanics of our body, feeling ourselves deeply internally, then we're kind of navigating life on autopilot, which is what a lot of women feel they're doing. And it's because we don't have this depth of sensitivity, which is part of our feminine gift.
Yes, it is. It's such a gift. And I think with a woman who is more open to it, I think it just becomes stronger and stronger. Would you say?
Yeah. And I mean, for me, so I would, for most of my 20s and even into my later 20s, I was a pretty numb woman, meaning like I was sexually active, and I had nice romantic partners, and I really enjoyed good food and good wine. But there was a section of me that was like, oh, I know there is more available to me, more intimacy, more depth, more connection with myself, more connection with those I love. Like there was this sense within my body, this bit of a yearning that it's like, you haven't tapped into your full potential yet. And I feel like a lot of women are in that space. But how? Like how to tap into more depth, how to tap into more feeling, how to tap into more depth of purpose in our life. All of those are things that we can't achieve by just forging forward. We've got to go deep. We've got to go in. We've got to resource all of our actions from a feeling state within us. And when we're numb or not feeling our heart or not feeling our womb, then all of the actions that we take in the world are just this forward momentum trying to get us where we think we need to go, without the body showing us where it feels we need to go. And I think they're two very different ways to orientate and to navigate in life. And I certainly was the pushing forward, go, go, go for a lot of years, and it didn't get me anywhere exciting. So this is why I'm such an advocate of women really figuring out how to navigate and make decisions based on not only what their mind knows is logical, but what their body feels is true.
And so how does someone get there? How do they start if they just don't feel tapped in? They're kind of always on the go. They're not really listening to the intuition. They're, because a lot of those nudges are sort of like whispers. And unless you're really slowing down or taking some quiet time to really listen, you could they just aren't landing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I totally hear you in what you're saying. Slowing down is absolutely a big one, not always a practical one, but also at the very start of this call, you said, most days I'll take time to do some kind of, you indicated at the start of this call, it was like most days I'll tap into that. And I really think that's really what you mentioned at the start, very wise, because these little whispers of the body's knowing, they're always there. They're omnipresent. The body is always speaking to us. And we can begin to tune in and listen through a whole different range of avenues. And there's 2 avenues that I think are really useful for us to begin with. The first avenue is listening to your body's gross needs. Now, I don't mean gross like, ooh, I mean gross like the loudest desires of our body. These are desires like drink more water, get up and go to the bathroom, stop and have a break. You've been sitting at your computer too long. Don't rush into the next task. Take a moment just to relax and decompress before you go again. The body is giving us these, let's call them a little bit louder cues that a lot of us ignore. I know back in the day, I used to say, I'll go to the toilet in a minute. I'll go to the toilet once I finish this. I would literally put off going to the bathroom. I would ignore my body's desire. And I ended up with urinary tract infections because I just was wanting to get this next thing done.
Right.
That was ignoring a pretty obvious cue from my body. So it really begins at this level. And then as that is achieved, it's not the best word, but it'll do. As that level of sensitivity is achieved to feeling these types of things, then we drop deeper and deeper and deeper. And the second tip that I would also recommend is that a lot of women have some type of practice that they do to connect and to decompress. It might be meditation, might be yoga, might be binging out on Netflix. We all decompress in our own way. For me, totally revolutionized my life when I figured out how to have a feminine practice of decompression. And so what I mean by that is instead of sitting on a yoga mat trying to calm my mind, what I actually do is I put on some music. I actually move my body to decompress it. I move what I'm feeling and what's overwhelmed me that day, and I move what I'm feeling in the body, maybe just for one song. That honestly resets my system and calibrates me just to be so much more able to deal with life. And so these are probably 2 of the biggest starting points that I would highly recommend. And if you do nothing else, that's going to make you infinitely happier.
I love that you mentioned feminine movement practice because that's definitely part of what I do on a very, very regular basis, whether I am happy or celebrating something, or if I'm sad about something or frustrated, I will put on a song, I will move my body. And typically, I'd say 95% of the time, it sort of moves through. It's sort of a magical thing, I feel.
Sorry, you go.
How it transforms how I'm feeling, and if I'm happy already, then it just sort of brings me more joy. But if I'm not feeling especially happy, I'm like, okay, I need to dance this out because I cannot focus right now.
And that's the thing, that's acknowledging I'm distracted, I'm cranky, I'm not being efficient. It's like your body probably wants a different flavor. It probably wants a feeling flavor. Feeling is the domain of the feminine. So I love sitting meditation practices, but for me, I feel so alive and I feel so liberated when I actually am able to do a kind of moving meditation, if you will. And I think this is very common for a lot of women. We are, sitting behind a desk for a big part of the day. So to then go and sit in doing some type of practice is not particularly freeing. But if we can actually figure out, and there's whole practices that you can actually learn about this with specificity, but it begins by really just moving from the inside out. So not putting your body in a posture or in a position that you think it needs, but letting the body guide you. Like, do you want to be on your hands and knees? Do you want to be on your back? Do you want to stand? Asking these questions of the body are yet another way to let the body lead. And instead of like saying, well, I think you need this or follow this formula because it worked for me, it's like figure out what works for your body. That's potentially the most empowering thing. And so personally, I'm like you. I do a feminine movement practice in bed before I get out of bed in the morning. I'll do it when I feel overwhelmed throughout the day. If I need to make a decision, I'll do a short movement practice and boom, clarity will just drop in. Or I'll do it to decompress at the end of the day. And some days, life's busy. I don't do it for a few days. That's fine. I find that when I do get back into the practice, it's like it's so nourishing, so nourishing. So I just don't know why we wouldn't do it.
Right. And I think that there's a thing about not having enough time to do it. Like, who has time to dance around or find a song to dance to? Like, I've got things to do. I have, whether you're working in the office or you are a really busy mom going from place to place and trying to do a million things at once. I think it's hard sometimes for women to find the time to do it.
I absolutely agree. And yet, and that is an absolute truth. I agree with that totally. And yet on the other hand, it's like, well, who's living your life if you're not in your body? Like, what's the point of any of it if you're not there to feel that moment with your child? Or if you're not there to actually be present with the task that's in front of you? So many of us are just moving forward with more and more speed. And that's really the world that we live in, this paradigm that you have to work harder to have more. That's not the truth of the feminine. The feminine is very nonlinear, and we can think about her like Mother Earth. Like, the moon's going to rise and then the sun's going to rise, and life is just going to constantly keep happening. Life is constantly dynamic. And the earth is never saying like, okay, we've got to work really hard for the sun to rise today. No, she's just chilling out, relaxing. The same can be true of our body when we are willing to let go. And this is a question. Are you willing to let go of having to always hustle and work harder for everything? Because the fact is, we have a resource in our bodies, a resource of magnetism. Magnetism is the ability to draw whatever you desire towards you with more ease. And when we actually begin to feel our body and inhabit our body, we begin to access more of this resource. And that means that we don't always have to strive forward so hard. Sometimes by just dropping into who we are, boom, the magic that we want actually appears. And I can tell you, as a woman who worked really, 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 really hard, like, actually, and I know this sounds a little bit like, sure, it's easy for you. But at the same time, like, I don't know why women in the world are not accessing more of their magnetism. It's such a superpower. It saves us so much time. And how we actually get into feeling magnetic, feeling desirable in our body is by those simple movement practices and being in our body.
Yes. And I think that we live in a society where it's rewarded the harder you work.
It absolutely is.
And, in my practice, I see women who come to me who are very successful and driven, and their hormones are out of balance, or their adrenals are shot. And I don't believe that working as hard as we do and putting our bodies through that, or not sleeping as much, not eating as well, don't have time to work out, or maybe working out too much and hardly sleeping 4 hours a night is not, it's breaking down a woman's body. And this is what I constantly see. And so I think taking more of a feminine approach. So what would that look like? How could women learn how to actually have more, aside from, taking a feminine movement practice, doing it at home, or, even taking some, slowing down a little bit, or maybe going for being in nature or something like that, how else can women who are, let's say, very successful and they are working and they are, they have their company, or they are in corporate and they're there all day and they're, the CEO of a company and they're just super busy. Like, do you have any ways?
Yes. I totally get that, because I run like an international school. I've got a team that I have to support. I've got a family to run. So I totally get those pressures of life. And there's probably two things, like everything that we've mentioned so far still applies, but there's two things that I really would strongly recommend. So it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but I use this embodied to-do list. And imagine in your mind 4 quadrants, like a square that's been divided into 4 sections. And in the top left corner, we write down energy. And in the top right corner, we write down creativity. In the bottom left corner, it's like things that need to be done. And in the bottom right corner, it's family and personal. And at the start of the day, I dump down everything that needs to be done. So I need to call this person, email that person, set up this meeting, set something up for my husband, blah, 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 blah. So I dump down everything that needs to be done on that to-do list. And then I work through the quadrants starting from the top left. So once I've dumped everything out of my brain, I ask the question, and this is the top left corner, embodied energy, like, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up in this today? Because when we just start going in like the busy part of the to-do list, the bottom left quadrant, like that stuff just overwhelms us. And you get on the little hamster wheel and it's really challenging to get off. So first thing in the morning, whether it's 2 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, what energy do you want to embody today? Tick that off your to-do list first, and that's totally going to set you up for success. And then particularly for the entrepreneurs in the house, the next quadrant is your creativity. Is there something that's going to, take your juices, like your creative juices, and you really need to be switched on for that task? Do that second. And then move into all the little menial stuff that needs to get done, sorting out the family details, sorting out business details. Just be really intentional with how you're spending your energy, because you only have a finite amount. So that was pretty revolutionary when I started organizing my business day and organizing my life based on these 4 quadrants, because it meant that I got into my body early. And the second tip that I had was that I would choose at least 1 day a week where I don't have meetings, I don't have things on my calendar. I probably will work that day, but I don't have to if I don't want to. So this is not possible for every person, depending on the type of work that we do. But I feel like if we can choose 1 day a week and say, like, this is my day, maybe to go really fast, maybe to go really slow, but I get to choose how I want to spend that day because I don't have other people's agendas on top of what I want to do. That's also a pretty wild and pretty revolutionary thing to claim for yourself as a woman.
And so what specific things are you doing on these days that do you schedule off one full day every week?
Yeah. So I actually have Thursday and Friday off every week. So or like this interview, scheduled it for a Wednesday, my time, and all my client calls, all of my team calls with my team, all of those happen Monday through Wednesday. I don't actually want to speak to anyone on a Thursday or Friday because maybe I want to take the weekend off. Honestly, that doesn't happen that often. But also maybe I just want to work on a creative project. And
Right.
So on those days, what happens is I'll be a little bit more relaxed with my alarm. I'll do a longer movement practice in the morning. I'll go a little bit slower than I would have otherwise. I'll just give myself permission to move at the space that I want to, at the speed that I want to, because I don't have to be pinging around, meeting everybody else's agenda. And I'll also try not to check my emails that day. We all know that emails are other people's agenda for you. And when we haven't actually checked in with what our own agenda is yet, so I do that using the embodied to-do list, but also doing a morning movement practice. If you haven't checked in with your own agenda, then you're going to just get on the hamster wheel real quick. And we all know that you don't really get off that until you maybe switch off in the afternoon, if people are switching off in the afternoon. And that's another big thing I do. I try to make a little bit of a ritual of switching off in the afternoon. Like I will shut down all the browsers on my computer and actually turn it off, not just put it to sleep, I'll turn it off. I'll close the door to my office, which happens to be in my home. I'll turn off the notifications from my team on my phone. Like I will literally, energetically and physically switch off. And that's a really hard boundary to hold, like the actual completion of the workday. A little bit easier if you're in the office, but that's a boundary that if you don't hold, nobody else is going to hold for you. And so we can hold that energy, we can hold that boundary through the actions that we're taking by just making sure there is a full stop at the end of our working day. That really helps our nervous system to rest.
I love that. I would love to know what does your morning ritual look like?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I can share this. So I'll wake up in the morning and I have some luxuries that I'm very grateful for and have created. I used to have to get up in the morning at 5:30 a.m. to go to work, which was a 30-minute drive when I worked in the hospital. So it wasn't always possible, or it wasn't possible at that time. But what I like to do, given I'm going to describe for you my ideal one, which happens most days of the week now.
Okay.
I'll wake up, I'll have an alarm. I wake up at the same time each day because my body needs structure. My body needs structure to work within. But as that alarm goes off, I'll just pause and I'll ask my body, I'll just drop the question into my body. Are you okay to wake up now? Or do you need some more rest? Most of the time it's like, yeah, let's do this. But sometimes it's like, oh, just roll around in bed for a little bit. So I'll literally roll around in bed for a little bit, stretching, taking a few breaths, feeling my body wake up. That's really nourishing. That's a really nourishing start to the day. And then I'll kind of come out and I'll see some, things that need to be organized in the kitchen and want to double check what time my meetings are. But before I get into any of that, I'll roll out my yoga mat. I'll get onto my hands and knees on all fours. I'll put on at least one song, or if I've got more time, I'll set my alarm for 20 or 30 or even 40 minutes. And I'll just do a movement practice. The movement practice that I do and that we teach at the school is called Primal Feminine Flow. And it's a movement practice where you're shutting down your eyes, you're bringing your awareness into the body, and you're just moving the body as it is to really unwind tension, to unravel any decisions that need to be made, and to also get clear on what it is that you want for the day. So I'll do that practice and then have a bit of a smoothie, sit down and write my to-do list for the day. So do that brain dump that I spoke about earlier. And I've already taken care of the energy because I've done my morning practices. So then I'll move into what's creative. And in the afternoon, I'll have my calls and just be a boss woman and get some shit done. And that's a pretty typical day for me, Monday through Friday.
What time do you wake up?
I'm up at 6:15 a.m.
Okay. And then what time are you in bed at night?
In bed anywhere between 10 and 11, usually. My partner's European, so he wants to stay up until 2 a.m. drinking coffee, but I'm a zombie after 11, so.
And do you also do anything in the evening as a ritual before bed or as you're prepping, towards the evening after dinner? Is there anything you love doing?
I find it can be really hard for me to switch off from work, and the temptation is often there to be the way I can switch off is just vegetate on the couch and put on a TV series. That's a very easy inertia for me. So I have no problems watching a good old TV series. I love me some Netflix, but I don't want to bring this zombie attitude to it because number one, that's not very to me, that's just not a very vital use of my life. I have so many precious days to live on this earth. Do I really want to be spending it as a total zombie? So if I feel that inertia happen, I'll just ask the question, what can I do to decompress before going to watch some Netflix so that I can kind of be a zombie in the bath, which is a little bit more my attention's in my body. I don't have all these bright things on a screen distracting me. I can feel myself if I'm in the bath. Or if my man's cooking dinner or we're going out or something, I'll be okay, maybe I have a red wine to relax. The point that I'm saying here is whether it's red wine, Netflix, having a bath, it's about the energy that you bring to the action. rather than the action itself. So you can take any action, but if you're consciously just deciding, I'm doing this to help me relax, for me, it's really useful to frame that in my mind, because it means that I don't slip into these patterns of just like becoming, you know, getting to my like 6th episode of something on Netflix and it's like 2 a.m. I go to the action being like, like this is the space that we're coming to decompress. So that's a pretty usual ritual, and it usually happens in the bath for me. I have some little pretty smelly things, some salts and oils, and there's some fairy lights in my bathroom. So made it this space where it's kind of, there's a lot of beauty there. And the feminine responds wonderfully to beauty. And so if we make a simple little ritual out of jumping in the bath, lighting a little candle, relaxing for a bit, that is, again, a really clear boundary of shifting from work into evening relaxing. And whatever you do after that bath, even if, you know, there's little people or children that want to jump in the bath with you, which is pretty inevitable if you're a mother, that can still be part of your decompression ritual. And I think any busy woman who lives in a modern world, we need something to decompress with in the evening. And we're either going to use something healthy or unhealthy. And we're the only ones who can decide what that is.
I love that. So tell us a little bit, how can people find you? Tell us what's happening right now. You said you have a school. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm the founder, and we are the School of Embodied Arts. So we're really just interested in supporting our community of women and also our students just to live and to work and to rock it out in an embodied way. And what that really means is we're all about the feminine arts. So we've got students from all around the world who love to play with us. And there's a few different ways that we work. So we've got regular episodes. We've just released an emotional embodiment series just to our subscribers to really be encouraging the idea of depth into yourself as a woman. So that's a free resource that's available on our website, which is jennaward.co. We also have spoken about feminine movement practices during this time, and there is a feminine movement practice called Primal Feminine Flow that you can download from our website. You can go to jennaward.co/flow, and it's just like a very inexpensive little download. There's some videos introducing you to an embodiment practice, like what are the pillars of embodiment? What the hell does embodiment even mean for you practically? Got some juicy playlists and some guided audio tracks so you can do this practice that we've kind of been speaking about and make sure you're kind of doing it in a constructive way. So that's a really amazing resource that lots of women in our community love. And the rest of the offerings of the school, so we also offer training for women who just want to move through all of their feminine gifts. And we also offer professional certification for feminine embodiment coaches, which I am, and which we've got a number of women around the world training in these embodied arts. Because I think this is the next wave of our feminism. We've really got a lot of equality. There's still some room for improvement in that, and we're not perfect, but at the same time, I think there's really a space for us as women to be reclaiming what it means to be feminine and to be sensual in an empowered way. So that's what the feminine embodiment coaches do as well.
Okay, I love that. And so you've got this beautiful primal feminine flow on your website.
Yep. So the details are at jennaward.co/flow, or you can just head to primalfeminineflow.com and you'll find it as well. It's a super juicy resource. Would highly encourage anyone whose kind of ears have been, piqued or sparked by that to dive in, because it's a very beautiful moving meditation that's body led.
It sounds beautiful. And I'm so, I definitely, everything that we spoke about tonight regarding like the movement and baths and just sort of taking time and slowing down is definitely something that I practice every day. And so whether it's a bath, maybe that's not every night, but that definitely happens. And I also agree with the adding, the salts and I use a lot of essential oils, and I have a special pillow for the bath. I've got candles and sometimes I'll put in some rose petals, and it's sort of, why not treat your body like the temple that it is and treat it as such? And I believe that if more women can just honor their bodies and slowing down, it just, not only for health reasons as well, but it's just such a beautiful way to embrace that beautiful feminine nature that we all have, that even though we're in this like really busy kind of, our lives are busy, but really taking the time to focus on our bodies and our health, and being able to switch from busy, running your company, you've got your team, and kind of switching that when you're with your partner at night, and being able to, for a lot of, like, if before I go on a date or anything like that, or if I've been working all day and really sort of like in masculine mode, I cannot go on a date. I cannot just like close my computer, get dressed and go. I need to switch. And for me, that switch happens pretty quickly when I do even just one short dance and putting on some music. That switches it for me. I don't know if it does for you, or if that's how, do you do anything? Do you do anything to, yeah.
Yeah, I notice when my partner comes in, sometimes he might come into my office and he wants to interrupt me. And if I've been right in the middle of like concentrating on something, I can be a little bit snappy, like, like I'm doing this thing. But if he just gives me a few beats, like give me a few moments, and maybe I'll put a song on, or maybe I'll just stand up, walk around, move a little bit. It's like physically reorientating my body from the task that I was moving forward with into a more open, receptive, feminine kind of attitude. I think physically doing that in the body totally shifts your mindset, your approach, your attitude. And so while I might have been a bit snappy like 1 second ago, he can sometimes just wait 1 minute, and he kind of knows now, just give her a minute. And then I'll totally be able to show up as like a genuinely present, loving woman, because that's what I want to be, and that's what I am. But it's switching between those different modes. Like moving the body physically is so powerful, because we're not only moving the physical body, we're moving all of the tension and energy and emotion that's been geared in one direction, and we're letting it settle and find a new balance. So I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, embodiment, I love, the word and the concept and everything. It's just so rich. Tell me a little bit about how do you incorporate sensuality into your, either into your own daily practice? Is this something that you also teach in the school?
Yes, absolutely. So sensuality is really the experience of pleasure, which is constantly always going on in your body. Like right now, as we're talking, as our beautiful listeners are listening to this, we may or may not be tapped into the idea that there is a current of pleasure constantly flowing through us. But the reality is, it is there. Often that pleasure is under layers of frozen tension, stuckness, numbness, all these things that where we're like really in our heads, just busy going forward, we don't necessarily tap into. So a very natural side effect of being in your body is that you will incidentally feel more pleasure. And that pleasure is a real sensual aliveness. And I'm not necessarily talking about overt sexuality. That's one end of the spectrum. I'm more just talking about like the sensory aliveness of just feeling bliss in your body. And so even if you take a moment just to like touch your own skin or caress it really gently in that moment, tune in. How does your body feel in response to that? That is always there. So we speak about sensuality a lot because it's actually our birthright. It's our natural set point as women. And when we're not connected to it, it's often because there's a layer of something in between that's separating us from that feminine gift, in my experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something that I just love talking about. So I wanted to know what your take was on that, because I think it is our natural set point. It is, it's there for us to tap into at any time. And I think when we are too much in our masculine, we tend to lose that I don't know how to describe it, but we kind of lose touch of it.
And I think that is 99.9% of the population, 99.9% of the time, because particularly when we get into the realm of sensuality, there are so many societal taboos. There are not a lot of empowered role models. Many of us haven't been shown how to do this in an empowered way. And marketing and advertising are showing us all of these really screwed up ideas about what sensuality means. None of that's empowering. That's a foreign formula. The truth is that sensuality is not what you look like. It's not what you do. It is what you already are. But you've got to be feeling your body to authentically feel sensual. And so the steps that usually happen with women are they notice that they're numb or they're on overdrive or they're searching for everything outside of themselves. They decide that they want to feel their body more fully, so they begin to become more sensitive to the body. That inevitably brings up a little bit of old pain or shame or hurt, which that's okay. We can be with that, move through that layer. And as that layer is moved through, we find that women just drop into pleasure. They don't have to try. It's not some like, okay, we're going to consciously cultivate sensuality now. It just arises. That certainly was my experience. And then as we are actually tapping into the sensual side of ourselves, this is where our really like magnetic fluid working in nonlinear ways, like kind of magical feminine ways where we can just make anything happen. Those are all the ingredients required for magnetism. So this is the typical journey that I see women move through. And, you know, we'll move through it more than once in our life. But it all begins by like the sensuality piece really begins with sensitivity in the body, because you can't feel that pleasure if you're not in the body.
It's so true. It's so true. Oh, so we are getting down to the last few minutes. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you just wanted to add to our female listeners?
I think the only thing that I would add is that there is so much that exists in terms of what you should be doing, what you could be doing, this advice, that 5 steps, blah, blah, blah. Like the world is full of that. And there is so much rich information, so much good information. And if you're listening to this beautiful podcast, then you're pretty switched on women already. But what I just really invite women to remember is that your body knows what's best for you. And so all of the other frameworks that exist are beautiful and they're useful and they're inspiring and they're necessary because they open doors inside of ourselves that we might not have actually realized were there. That's a great service. But at the same time, you're an expert on your body. And unless you are devoted to researching your body, asking the question of your body, what's the best thing for me to do here? Then we're always going to be searching outside ourselves for the answer. You know, everybody always says the answer's inside of you. What does that even mean? It means your body is speaking to you constantly. So just listen a little bit more. She's got the perfect for you framework in order for you to move forward with. So take all the inspiration that we've offered and put it through the filter of your body, because that's your greatest resource for discernment and for what's true for you. That's the only thing I would add.
Yes, so true. Thank you so much, Jenna, for joining me this evening. I just love what you're doing, and it's so important. It's so important for women to be really tapped in and really knowing how to embody that beautiful feminine nature. And I am so glad that you came on this evening, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me, Margaret.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this conversation between Jenna and I. And I hope that you get to be able to practice some of these techniques that she was discussing, and maybe picking a couple of songs and really getting your groove on, or doing a sensual movement, you know, in the privacy of your own bedroom or wherever. And I just think that it's a really beautiful way, or even taking a bath at night. I think that's going to be just so good for you and your body and your adrenals and your hormones. So to learn more about Jenna and for all the show notes, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 70. And if you got an Alexa for Christmas, you can now find the Sacred Medicine podcast there. All you have to do is say, play the Sacred Medicine podcast from Tune In, and it will play on your Alexa. Also, I wanted to just give a shout out to a couple of countries. We keep track of our listeners all over the world, and it really can bring me to tears when I see people from all over the world listening to the Sacred Medicine podcast. So I bow to you, and I want to just say, shout out to Switzerland, Spain, the Philippines, Russia, the Netherlands, Mexico, India, Saudi Arabia, Iceland. I love that you are listening, and it touches my soul in such a big way. And so much love, and we will see you all next week. Bye for now.